Today, you and I are tracking a rapid strike chain. Russian transports hauling troops, ammo, and vital combat supplies got wiped out the second they rolled into view. It proves this frontline kill cycle is moving way faster than in the white, early days of this war. That is why this update matters so much. The shock factor is not just that multiple enemy vehicles took direct hits. It is that these transports were obliterated while still packed with infantry and heavy munitions, or right as they parked for the next offensive push. This means a single drone strike does way more damage than just wrecking one target. A brutal tactical logic is forming across Ukraine. These drones are not just chasing road convoys. They expose entrenched infantry, threaten masked artillery pits, shred communication lines, and suddenly make basic supply runs a total death trap. In modern combat, the line between the front line and rear guard is completely fading. Aerial pressure keeps slicing deeper into the supply chains, keeping armies moving. Stick with me here, because the real tactical value is not just counting the destroyed armor, it is understanding how this relentless threat from the sky rewrites modern warfare. If supply trucks, tree-line bunkers, heavy comms gear, and pitch-black night movements are no longer safe, how much breathing room can Russian forces actually hold on to in this combat zone? What makes this frontline reality so lethal is not just the FPV detonation, it is the terrifying speed of the kill chain behind it. The true threat starts before impact. It starts the exact second a target gets spotted and painted for destruction. Ukrainian recon units are monitoring the combat zone 24/7, and this relentless overwatch is completely redefining what movement means for Russian troops. A vehicle never has to reach the zero line to become vulnerable. They spot them rolling down dirt paths, pivoting sharply near a dense tree line, driving with headlights burning at dusk, or just idling for a split second right outside a forward operating base. These tactical details matter because drone operators do not need hours. They just need one clear visual, one verified patrol route, or a pause long enough to lock the coordinates in place. Once that happens, the retaliation is immediate and brutal. The recon drone acts as the eyes up high, scanning the dirt, tracking movement, and verifying exactly what kind of armor just rolled up. The FPV unit operates as the striking fist, diving in before the target can evade. This lethal coordination is now Ukraine's biggest tactical advantage on the ground. The true danger is not just a single rogue drone flying solo. It is a synchronized network where one operator spots, command receives, and the strike team attacks. The delay between these steps is so tight now that Russian crews get zero reaction time once exposed. This is exactly why this theater of war feels entirely unforgiving. Months ago, getting spotted did not guarantee an instant fiery death. You still had a slim window to drop infantry, camouflage the tank, throw it in reverse, or scramble for cover before artillery rained down. Today, that survival margin is totally gone. A tank commander hitting the brakes for a crater is already giving the strike team a perfect lock to close in. A convoy driver pausing near a blown-out building thinks he is safe, but he is just making the kill easy. Even a tiny pivot reveals a pattern from the sky. What feels cautious down in the mud looks totally predictable on a high-def drone feed. This is what a compressed kill chain actually means. It is no mere technical upgrade. It shatters enemy behavior, timing, and control. Russian units are bleeding out in a zone where any movement means death. Every Russian advance is a massive gamble now. The highway is no longer just a path to the fight. The road itself is an active kill zone. You and I can see this tactical shift clearly. Ukraine is weaponizing data, pure speed, and swarm coordination to crush morale before contact even starts. Russia marches under skies where being seen instantly triggers a relentless pursuit. One side dictates the battle through total awareness. The other bleeds out from pure aerial exposure. This massive difference controls the combat tempo. The army that spots first and shoots first dictates the entire fight. So what do we learn? The exposed force is scrambling against threats already right on top of them. Listen up, you and I are tracking a deadly repeating tactical pattern here. Soon, every supply route is zeroed in. Every checkpoint feels like a kill zone, and every stalled convoy bleeds assets far beyond just one wrecked truck. This latest precision strike is critical, We didn't just vaporize a Russian heavy weapon, we shattered the entire timeline and staging of a massive enemy offensive. Out here on the front line, an armor piece hauling infantry or ordnance isn't just a rolling chunk of steel. It is a cog in a massive assault grid relying on split-second arrival. That is exactly why our recon spotting that TOS-1 Assault Sapieok launcher was such a massive tactical victory. This heavy thermobaric rocket platform is built to absolutely level fortified lines, burning out infantry dug deep inside trenches, bunkers, or hardened shelters. Seeing this beast roll into an active combat zone means heavy trouble. It signals a massive escalation. It confirms prep for a brutal, mechanized push. This ordnance is deployed specifically to pulverize our resistance before shock troops advance. Caught fully loaded on drone optics, prepping to fire, this target instantly became a high-value priority. It represented a lot more than just hostile armor. When our attack drone impacted, we didn't just get footage of a burning hull. The absolute tactical jackpot here? That launcher was packed with rockets. That payload multiplied the destruction. Instead of a localized fire, the FPV strike ignited a catastrophic secondary explosion, ripping through the grid with lethal shrapnel, obliterating the chassis entirely, and instantly deleting any chance of that system joining the imminent Russian assault. A catastrophic kill like this doesn't just score one crater on the map. The shock wave shatters the entire enemy battle plan relying on that fire support. Let's break down the actual tactical value here. The Russian forces didn't just lose a multi-million-dollar piece of heavy military hardware. They lost a full rocket payload, the trained operators inside the hull, and the immense suppressing fire meant for Ukrainian lines. That last factor is absolutely critical. A vacuum bomb launcher is lethal not just for the blast, but for the infantry maneuver it enables right after. If that asset was staging to breach our defenses, neutralizing it pre-launch accomplishes far more than just scratching one vehicle off the board. You are snapping the spearhead off their attack before the thrust even begins. This brutal combat logic applies to secondary targets that might seem low priority at first. A transport truck isn't just moving men, it is actively funneling raw combat power to a critical pressure point. An armored supply run isn't just hauling heavy wooden crates. It is literally pumping blood into the upcoming frontline offensive. A logistics rig idling near the zero line isn't just parked. It is the exact lifeline keeping a hot, contested trench system fully operational and lethal. When a kamikaze drone strikes right then, we inflict massive structural damage across multiple vectors. Hostile troops die, heavy gear burns out, ammo stockpiles vanish. The entire operation relying on those supplies stalls out or collapses before it ever gets off the ground. Stick with me here, because the tactical reality is shifting. A cheap quadcopter isn't just a threat because it can burn $1 million tank. Its true battlefield power comes from executing a strike at the exact second the target holds maximum strategic value. In this brutal theater of war, a single drone impact dictates the outcome of the entire sector. If a $500 explosive can freeze a massive mechanized deployment dead in its tracks, the financial logic of modern warfare has completely flipped on its head. The intensity of this frontline combat is escalating, because hiding is basically impossible now. The kill chain isn't just targeting armor caught out in the open fields anymore. It actively punishes the fatal assumption that static cover will shield troops, ordnance, and gear once our aerial recon starts hunting overhead. Ukrainian aerial strike teams aren't just hunting convoys on the highways or blasting moving armor. They are hunting down infantry, diving into tree lines after a heavy contact. They track panicked squads rushing into ruined buildings, praying concrete rubble will save them. They pinpoint entrenched bunkers dug deep into heavy forest canopies, where enemy artillery units used to rely on thick shadows and rough terrain for survival. Drone optics are completely exposing logistics hubs and ammo dumps concealed inside civilian structures, or crammed into tight bunkers that you and I would think looked absolutely bulletproof. What feels like solid cover to the grunts on the ground means absolutely nothing to the eyes upstairs. Listen up. The brutal reality behind this shift is dead simple. Unmanned aerial vehicles exploit angles our ground forces simply cannot lock down. And that high ground changes the entire war. A rifleman freezing in the brush might believe his camo blends perfectly with the dirt and shadows. But a drone operator above spots the human silhouette, the freshly crushed grass, or the displaced dirt marking his exact position. A bombed-out structure might block the line of sight from ground level, but blown roofs, shattered concrete, and exposed doorways leave those advancing squads wide open to deadly vertical observation. Even when the sun drops, the lethal pressure stays. Thermal optics strip away the darkness, making human heat signatures glow white against the freezing mud. This is exactly where the killing zone gets much, much tighter. Russian commanders are desperately shoving their infantry and heavy armor into the densest, most concealed tree lines available. Ukrainian drone pilots are ripping that false security apart, turning what looked like hard shelter into nothing but a bloody waiting room. The fallout is a brutal theater, where the very concept of hiding is crushed daily, and mostly failing completely under relentless high-resolution aerial overwatch. This is critical because it dictates more than just immediate survival. It shatters how long platoons hold the line, how safely gunners load their artillery, and the seconds troops think they have before the shrapnel hits. Let me break down this grim sequence for you, step by bloody step. An isolated hostile gets spotted sprinting, then dives into heavy foliage. The bird keeps visual contact, hunts him down, and detonates. A fresh squad falls back into a shattered building, vanishing indoors. The hovering hunter circles, bides its time, and then levels the entire structure. A heavy machine gun nest is dug deep into the timber to minimize exposure. The aerial sweep still pinpoints the heat signature, turning a stealthy fire support mission into an immediate smoking crater. An ammo dump appears totally secured by thick concrete and dense forest canopy. But the second it gets pinged, that stockpile turns into a massive tactical liability. Every scenario feels unique, but the brutal combat logic remains identical. Once your grid coordinates are locked in, dodging the incoming kill chain becomes nearly impossible. This means the main crisis goes way beyond a handful of blown trenches and burned-out bunkers. The terrifying reality is that the entire doctrine of safe cover is collapsing under fire. Tree belts, deep dugouts, battered houses. Fortified positions still buy time, but they no longer guarantee survival like they used to. They might shave off the risk for 10 minutes, but they never stop the hunt. In today's combat zone, staying off the radar for 5 minutes does not mean you survive. And we have to ask ourselves a very grim question here. When explosive drones swarm saturate the sky, do woods and bunkers offer any actual protection? Or are they just concrete tombs that buy you 3 extra minutes before the payload drops? Right now, blowing up one random tank is not the primary tactical goal. Severing the hostile force's ability to spot targets, share intel, and shoot back sends a much more devastating shockwave across the front. A signal repeater might not look as terrifying as a main battle tank, but it does the heavy lifting to keep entire battalions talking. Through that hardware, kill orders drop, missile warnings broadcast, and suicide birds find their prey. While that network node stays alive, it fuses forward observation, command decisions, and direct lethal action into one brutal system. The second we spot it, it stops being just standard military gear. It turns into the fatal weak point of their entire local grid. When a high explosive payload finally smashes into that antenna, the shockwave ripples way beyond the blast radius. Vaporizing the transmitter is just the first tactical victory. The real damage is the instant, blinding chaos hitting the sector. Squads relying on that feed are suddenly cut off from live combat updates. Enemy pilots lose connection to their birds or suffer fatal lag. Incoming artillery strikes get sloppy and sluggish because their targeting data is completely blacked out. In that exact second, the enemy does not just lose a radio. They lose their vision, and without vision, they die. You and I are watching a brutal tactical engagement unfold. Russian units depend on comms networks to maintain situational awareness, pilot their drones, and keep their infantry moving in sync. Ukrainian forces, meanwhile, are aggressively hunting and hitting these critical nodes to degrade their command structure. They aren't just blowing up random armor or trenches. The strategy here is surgical, wiping out the critical links that keep the enemy war machine running. Sever those links, and even fully armed battalions go blind and deaf. They stop functioning as a cohesive, real-time fighting force. The lethal impact of this tactic shows up in live firefights. A squad cut off from comms will freeze in place. They completely lose their situational awareness. A drone operator losing signal lock means aborted strikes and high-value targets slipping right away. Assault teams stall their advance, paralyzed in the trenches waiting for green lights that never come. It lacks the flash of a heavy artillery barrage, but this silent paralysis dictates the battlefield. The combat zone slows, fractures, and loses all momentum. This is where tactical analysis goes far beyond body counts. We are no longer just tallying destroyed armor or plotting artillery impact craters on a map. It is about watching an entire military network get systematically choked out, piece by piece. Every mast blown apart, every data link severed, violently degrades the Russian capability to maneuver and react under heavy fire. This friction compounds rapidly. It dictates the defensive posture of an entire combat sector, even when their heavy mechanized assets remain fully intact. Combine this blackout tactic with relentless strikes on enemy logistics, and the strategic picture crystallizes. Convoys burn on the roads, camouflaged bunkers are exposed, their command frequencies are jammed or dead. These threats multiply. They feed into a deadly loop. An exposed infantry platoon is easily painted by radar. A deafened squad cannot maneuver fast enough to survive. And any force pinned down becomes a sitting duck for the next guided munition. This is why the front line is buckling under multi-domain warfare. The most lethal threats aren't just charging straight at them across an open field. The real killer is the inability to coordinate a defense in time. When the command loop collapses, the fallout goes beyond one blown-up tank. It shatters enemy timing, morale, and control. Let's assess the real question at play here today. What hurts an army more in modern combat? Losing one armored carrier or losing the tactical vision to see, communicate, and direct firepower across a hot zone? This escalating phase of the conflict is ruthless, turning the slightest troop movements into suicide missions. Even light transport, like motorcycles and off-road quads, aren't ignored anymore. They are critical lifelines aggressively hunted by strike drones. This brutally shifts frontline logistics. Resupply missions are now death traps. Troops pick these dirt bikes because they are swift, evasive, and can navigate narrow trench lines where heavy armor simply gets stuck. They rush ammo, medical gear, fuel, and basic survival supplies out to forward operating bases actively taking heavy fire. They evacuate the wounded, run fresh radio batteries, sprint spare parts, and sustain the brutal tempo required to hold a trench. What seems trivial is literally the logistical spine keeping these soldiers alive. That is why blowing up a bike carries massive strategic weight. When a strike drone vaporizes a quad, it isn't just scrap metal burning. It is the vital ammunition cooking off, the critical medevac that fails, and a stranded platoon left entirely defenseless in the mud. One precision hit shatters the resupply chain, creates a logistical bottleneck, and forces commanders to abort their next maneuver. You and I can see exactly how this lethal pressure compounds. A courier speeds down a narrow dirt trail, hoping to evade main highway kill zones. A quad bike hauls rations across rough terrain, betting its life on speed and low visibility. These aren't glorious cavalry charges. They are desperate scrambles just to keep frontline trenches breathing. But the second a thermal optic spots them, hell breaks loose. The target is painted, hunted, and annihilated. The very second evasive maneuvers become absolutely impossible. This creates a deadly pattern. Even the smallest supply run is now completely uncertain. Frontline units cannot just drive up anymore. Every single push forward carries massive risk. Every trip back is a target. When that happens daily, the bleeding spreads across the combat zone. Losing one ammo truck hurts, sure, but stacking those losses utterly destroys their ability to hold ground. This is where the real tactical nightmare takes hold. Combat pressure isn't just about heavy armor or massive surges. It lives and dies on relentless resupply. Grunts need bullets to hold the line, fuel to advance, and clean water just to survive. Choke off that logistics chain, and the Russian war machine cracks. Troops hoard their ammo because the next drop is a ghost. Patrols crawl in terror, knowing every road is zeroed in. Medevac and recovery operations grind to a halt. Soon enough, defending a trench takes extreme effort while offering zero actual security. That is exactly how endless tiny cuts bleed out a massive army across the whole front. Let's look at this together. The combat strategy here is entirely brutal. Russian forces desperately need those light vehicles to survive. Ukrainians know they don't have to vaporize every heavy tank to break them. By hunting down motorcycles and light infantry transport, they completely strangle the critical flow of reinforcements and heavy firepower. Every drone strike forces a delay, a reroute, or a suicidal second attempt. That grinding repetition breaks morale much faster than a single heavy explosion. What you and I need to realize is not just that more Russian vehicles were destroyed, but how this battlefield brutally punishes absolutely any unit that dares to move. Heavy armor, ammo trucks, thermobaric launchers, hidden bunkers, radio towers, and desperate motorcycle convoys are all caught in the exact same kill zone. The math is simple. If you get spotted out there, you are instantly marked. And when that nightmare repeats across every road, forest, and supply trench, the tactical damage crushes the enemy far beyond one localized explosion on the line. That is exactly what makes this combat escalation way deadlier than your average drone attack run. Ukrainian forces aren't just blowing up metal. They are weaponizing drones to paralyze multiple layers of Russian ground operations simultaneously. But you and I know combat is a brutal race to adapt, leaving one massive question hanging. Can the Russian command slow down this aerial slaughter and carve out breathing room to maneuver? Or will Ukraine exploit this advantage, making the skies completely lethal across every single sector? Sound off in the comments right now. Who adapts faster in a modern war zone where every single step you take is actively hunted from above? If this intel briefing gave you a clearer view of the escalating front, hit like, share this report, and subscribe to Military Force for more intense, ground-level battlefield analysis.